Alright, sorry about that. My mother called and wanted to check up on things. Anyway, getting back to what was I? Oh, yeah. And I quote, because I know I was off, I was right here, right? Okay. And I quote, this is what this person says, and I quote, after, we read here. This is what they said, and I quote, Fiona's statement says that she found attraction to Scourge in 150 and then tried to find the same in Sonic. This is the opposite of what she said in 153 when Scourge tried to put the moves on her. I guess the writers just ignored 153. And then the side note is, because if they didn't, then this story would collapse, which it did anyways. Continuing on. The person says, I like this line from Fiona. Basically it says Sonic is hung up on being a hero. I'm not arguing against it. He is. And this is what Fiona says. Let's remember, this is 172. She says, I was hoping you'd be just as much fun, but you're hung up on the whole virtuous hero thing. And again, the person says they like this line from Fiona because it says Sonic is hung up on being a hero, not arguing against it, but he is. But then the side note is, whoa, hold up, look at that footnote. Sally split with a slap in Sonic 132? Did they even read or edit this crap? Basically, they're pointing out a flaw and an error right there, even in the footnote. Because we all know that when Carl Bowlers did that issue, it was 134, not 132. Because, again, miscommunication. And then they continue on, quote, they point out another line, she says, and this is what she says in 172. You're a prime example, let's see. You're my prime example, or did you forget you left me imprisoned? Okay, now this is what they say about that line. This line I do find an issue with. Why would she say this when she also said this below in 153? And then their side note is, again, fantastic footnote work here. Archie skillfully directs you to an issue where Fiona is a robot and Sonic never even learns of her existence. In fairness, this story was in an issue 28, but of a Knuckles comic. But this is what they're pointing out, what she says in 153. Once again, the writer seems to have forgotten 153. Because this is what she says there. This is what Fiona says here in 153. I blamed you for a really long time, but when you nearly sacrificed your life to save the world, I couldn't continue believing that a guy like you would leave me there on purpose. Now, this is what they say about this. Again, and I quote, once again, the writers seem to have forgotten 153 and continue pushing Fiona to the dark side. I don't know about you, but the words in 153 seem a lot more genuine than 172. And then their side note is, yeah, Fiona in 153 is talking like a person. Fiona in 172 is talking like a machine. The Ken Pender story has more natural sounding dialogue. Go figure. But they do point out they like another line, and this line they like from 172. This one line they like from 172. The way you hold back makes you weak. It's about survival of the best, and you're... Basically, she doesn't get to say anything because Amy attacks her. But the person doing this journal says that they like this line about the survival of the best, or fittest. However, it's a philosophical statement that she never ever hinted with all the fights she has been in with Sonic or in the comic series before for that matter. So to me, this statement is coming out of the blue for the first time. And then we have a big old side note here. Big old side note right here. And this is what they say in the side note. Yeah, wasn't Fiona's role in the team about helping people who were injured? Wasn't she willingly part of a team dedicated to helping the weak for at least 2 years of her life? Oh, and of course, here's another one of those moronic, quote unquote, having the strength to temper yourself and not just slaughter everyone instead of letting them face justice and is weak statements. Always a good way to make your villain look like a total Burke. There's a reason it's called holding back. They are containing their own rage and sense of righteousness fury to do the right thing. Giving in and just killing people is weak, not the opposite. Also, yeah, Sonic is weak because he doesn't kill his enemies, but Scourge is strong when he doesn't even kick out the suppression squad after they betrayed him countless times. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Ian Flynn writes Fiona as if she is a total moron. That's a side note. Now, continuing on with the journal, the analysis Rant theory, and I quote, "When I first read these lines, I thought, whoa, this girl's a badass. The problem is, when you look at it in the context of the storyline before 160, it doesn't work. This sort of thinking doesn't happen in a vacuum or overnight and should have manifested itself somewhere along the way in the story before we got to this point. But it's obvious the writers were going for the da-da-da-da-da moment with the whole Fiona betrayal thing, so that's why it was played out this way. Then, we must not forget the big slap scene. This is the moment Fiona really goes to the dark side. Basically what she did to Tails in 172. Poor Tails. I wouldn't want anyone to say I glossed over the shock and awe the writers put in with Fiona's betrayal. And then here's a side note. Every time I look at these panels, they get dumber. She's using her right hand, which is on his right cheek. And then suddenly, within a second, she's moved her... Okay. And then suddenly, within a second, she's moved her hand around to the other side of his face and knocked him flying with a single backhand. No, that's not how it works. She doesn't have super strength. She's certainly not strong enough to launch him into the air and make him twist his body like that. I'm so glad Yarlin's art improved. And then they point out, continuing on, I quote, "Here's a couple more mistakes in 172. These are minor, but they do point out the overall sloppy work. Basically, it points out a mistake of a side note, saying something was one, let's see. Saying something was 167 when it should have been 165. 167 is Mobius 25 years later issue. Basically, just like with 132, noting the slap of... Hold on, I'll be right back. sorry about that. She called again because she wanted to check up on something again. So I apologize for that. But continuing on. Like I said, continuing on. What was I? Oh yeah, basically they point out the same thing they had pointed out with Sally's slap on Sonic. They said it was 132, when in fact it was actually 134. And they pointed out the same mistake here. And then the side note is, Tails shown here confiding this dark important secret in Amy instead of Sally. Instead of Sally, Bunny, or any of his other friends, all whom is closer to than Amy, so that Amy could be the one to get a leg up on Fiona. How did we not notice the favoritism before the Mecha Sally arc made it overly blatant? That was a side note there. Okay. And then they point out this line from Amy. This is what Amy says after the whole betrayal thing comes into play. She says, which leaves the backstabbing, heart-wrenching, ugly, stupid, dumb, hairband-wearing traitor to me. And then they point out, this line by Amy is pretty much a branding statement. It clearly states that what the writers want the readers to think of Fiona as. I find it sort of funny, as we all know Amy doesn't have a biased opinion on the matter. FoxAffliction, Amy, aren't you the one wearing a hairband? Fiona wears a yellow bow. And then I love how they kind of joke around with Amy, having Amy say, hey, the writers told me what to say. It's not my fault. FoxAffliction, I see. Must be the same ones that forgot about issue 153. Okay, now they continue on and say, that's enough about 172. Let's move on to a few points I'd like to make to support this little twist I put on the story. And then they show panels from 161 right here, which of course was Ian's first issue. It says, these are the panels here. These are from 161, where Scourge shows up and announces he was Evil Sonic, Anti-Sonic, and is now Scourge. A couple of interesting observations. I find it interesting that Fiona is one of the ones leading the charge. I guess maybe Fiona doesn't recognize him, even though Scourge says it's him, he's the Anti-Sonic. If Fiona really liked the Scourge, why would she be one of the first to attack? I also guess Fiona sees no problem that Scourge is with Rouge, the rival who beats her all the time. Wouldn't you think this would make Fiona a little bit upset if she really did like Scourge? I mean, Rouge has been running with Scourge, then Anti-Sonic, since 151. And Fiona does or doesn't know about this? The whole timeline with Scourge and Fiona is just so sketchy.